Hey, this is CJ Math students, and welcome to Notes 12.2 or 12.12 Part 2. So again, we're practicing splitting the sum. Remember, if the whole number is negative, that means the fraction is also negative. So negative 5 plus negative 1/2. Split this up into plus 8 plus 3/6. So now let's use the commutative property and rewrite this. The whole numbers next to each other, negative 5 plus 8 plus, don't forget your signs. These pesky little negatives, if you don't keep track of them, they can ruin your whole problem. So make sure it's negative 1/2 and not just a half, right? Find common denominators. Times 3 times 3. That gives us, first of all, negative 3 over 6 plus 3 over 6. And then we have negative 5 plus 8. All right, so this is what we all have, right? And the beautiful thing is look, what's this called? We had it earlier. It's the additive inverse, so you can just cross it off. That's going to be 0. And then we have negative 5 plus 8, sorry. That's a different sign subtract. So 8 minus 5 is equal to 3, and keep the sign that you have more of, which is positive, so 3 is your answer. So really, if you're starting at negative 5.5, that's right here in between 5 and negative 6. And then moving 8 and 3/6, or really 8 and 1/2 spaces to the right, it's 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, 4 space, 5 spaces, 6 spaces, 7 spaces, 8 spaces and a half, and we end up at 3. So starting here and ending at 3. All right, let's do one more. So negative 6 1/8 plus 5 1/4. So let's split these. So negative 6 plus negative 1/8 plus, and then split this, 5 plus positive 1/4, right? So let's use commutative property of addition to say negative 6 plus positive 5 plus, don't forget the negative, it's pesky, negative 1/8 plus 1/4, right? Obviously we have to find common denominators now, so times 2 times 2. And that gives negative 6 plus 5 plus negative 1/8 plus 2/8, right? And now let's do our integer rules, right? So here we have different signs subtract, negative 6 plus 5, different signs. So 6 minus 5 is 1, but I have more negatives, so it equals negative 1. That's what that equals, negative 1. Plus, and then what's this? Negative 1 plus 2, we have more positives, so 2 minus 1 is positive 1/8. So, we're not done. So we have a negative 1 plus 1/8. You know, if you think back up to here, what did we do when we had a negative 1 plus a positive 1/4? You can't just smush them together, right? You actually have to borrow, right? So we're going to borrow right here. We're going to change this to negative 8 over 8, and then add 1/8, and then do this problem. Again, this is DSSM, different sign subtract. So negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7/8 is our answer. All right. So again, just think, look at the estimation on this, right? You have negative 6 1/8 of something and 5 1/4 of something, right? If you look back to your reference, that's negative 6.125, right? And that's 5.25. Like, do you have more negatives of something or more positives? You have more negatives, right? So it makes sense that your answer is going to be more negative, right? If this was like money, right, and you owed $6, but you paid back, $5.25, like, you're going to still owe money, right? And so that's why our answer kind of makes sense. Now, on the back side here, it gets a little tricky because we're starting to work with all sorts of rational numbers, fractions and decimals. What you need to do is to utilize the information that you have from our previous unit on like converting fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions to make these problems easier. For instance, I would not write negative 7 1/2 plus 3.5. I would write this as negative 7.5 plus 3.5, and I just solve it that way. I avoid fractions. That's me because I don't really like fractions, right? But when I do this, I say, hey, this is a DSSM, and I'd say, all right, so 7.5 minus 3.5 gives us 4.0, but it's negative 4.0 because I have more negatives than I did positives, right? So that's like starting at negative 7.5 is right here, moving 3.5 to the right is going to give us, 7.5 is going to be right in between the negative 7 and 8, and moving 3.5 to the right is going to get you to 4, right? So starting there, ending there. right? Just like with 2.4 and negative 3/5, I would be like, okay, I don't super love fractions. So I'd say, hey, I'm going to rewrite this as 2.4 plus negative 0.6, right? Because that's 3/5 is 0.6. I can use my reference sheet. And then I'm doing 2.4, don't forget my decimal, sorry, minus 0.6. Notice how everything lines up. I'm going to have to borrow, right? That's 1. That's a 14. So I got 1.8. And is it positive or negative? It's positive because I had more positives, right? So starting at 2.4, which is almost halfway between 2 and 3, and then moving 0.6 back, you're going to get to about 0.8. Right about there. 1.8, sorry. 1.8. Right? So again, try and do that for D. And then I'm going to do one more problem with you on A. We're going to hold off on this and check this out on Monday. And also probably check out C on Monday as well. All right, so Samantha owes her father $7. Owing money is always negative. She just got paid $550 plus $550, right? Getting paid is addition. If she gives that money to her dad, how much does she owe? So basically, we're just trying to find how much more money does she owe. So we're saying 7 DSSM, right? Different sign, subtract more, minus 5.50. Notice how I lined up my decimals. And you're like, wait, where's the decimal here? Well, right behind the 7, 0, 0. So that's what we're going to subtract. We have to borrow from the 7, which becomes a 6. This becomes a 10. Oh, nope, now it becomes a 9. And this is, sorry, you did not have to borrow from there. My fault. That just becomes a 10. My bad. Just becomes a 10. All right, so 0 minus 0 is 0. 10 minus 5 is 5. And $1.50. Now, does she have $1.50? No, but she owes her dad $1.50. So her wallet looks like this, negative $1.50, right? Because she still owes that money. All right, look at part B and try and do that on your own. 1/8 is in your reference sheet.